The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster stands as one of the most significant technological catastrophes in modern history, impacting Japan and the world at large. This accident, triggered by natural disasters, a massive earthquake and devastating tsunami on March 11, 2011, left a lasting imprint on nuclear energy as well as on environmental and social landscapes. Below is a detailed chronology of events, causes, consequences, and the lessons to be learned from this tragedy. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was located on the northeastern coast of Japan in Fukushima Prefecture. Operational since 1971, it was long considered one of the essential facilities for meeting Japan's energy needs. However, the earthquake that struck on March 11, 2011, caused widespread destruction of infrastructure, including catastrophic damage to the nuclear plant. The tsunami waves that followed the earthquake worsened the situation, leading to a failure in the reactor cooling systems, marking the beginning of the nuclear disaster. Causes of the disaster. The primary cause of the Fukushima disaster was a series of natural events. The earthquake, with a magnitude of 9.0 on the Richter scale, known as the Great East Japan Earthquake, inflicted significant damage to buildings and infrastructure. However, it was the tsunami caused by this earthquake that became the critical factor. The height of the waves reached up to 15 meters in some places, far surpassing the height of the protective barriers around the Fukushima Daiichi plant. The waves flooded the reactor cooling systems, leading to their shutdown and the subsequent overheating of nuclear fuel. The Fukushima disaster also revealed many issues in the design and management of nuclear power plants. First, the plant's construction was not designed to withstand such large-scale natural disasters, and the protective system failed to endure the strong waves. The protective structures proved inadequate to prevent the flooding of critical facilities, such as backup power generators, which played a key role in reactor cooling in case of external power failure. Another factor that exacerbated the situation was ineffective crisis management. Plant operators and the management of Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, were not prepared for the scale of the catastrophe. A lack of clear information, delayed responses, and poor coordination between government agencies and the plant operator resulted in ineffective initial containment measures. For instance, the evacuation of residents around the plant was delayed, increasing the health risk for local residents. Timeline of events. Immediately following the tsunami's impact, the reactor cooling systems at the plant failed. The primary cause was the flooding of the backup diesel generators that were supposed to activate the emergency cooling system. Without power, the reactors began to overheat and the nuclear fuel started to melt. In the days following the disaster, a series of explosions occurred in the reactor buildings. These explosions were caused by the accumulation of hydrogen, which was formed due to water decomposition under high temperatures in the reactors. The explosions destroyed the buildings housing reactors 1, 2, and 3, leading to significant releases of radioactive substances into the environment. A critical point was reached when the nuclear fuel began to melt, known as a meltdown. This process started in the first days after the disaster, when the loss of cooling caused the temperature in the reactors to rise rapidly. As a result, reactors 1, 2, and 3 experienced fuel meltdown, which caused further damage to the reactor structures and led to leaks of radioactive materials into the atmosphere and ocean. Response and evacuation. Immediately after the disaster, the Japanese government announced the evacuation of residents within a 20-kilometer radius of the plant. Over 150,000 people were forced to leave their homes, many of whom never returned. Poor coordination of the evacuation and a lack of information in the early days of the disaster resulted in many residents being exposed to elevated levels of radiation. At the international level, the Fukushima disaster triggered a wave of concern. Many countries reviewed their nuclear energy development programs. Some nations, like Germany, decided to completely abandon nuclear energy in the future. while others tightened safety requirements for nuclear facilities. International experts actively participated in mitigating the aftermath and proposed technical solutions to prevent similar disasters in the future. Aftermath and cleanup. A group of engineers and workers, later known as the Fukushima 50, became a symbol of heroism and self-sacrifice. These individuals remained at the plant, risking their lives to prevent further radiation leaks. Their work in cooling the reactors and stabilizing the situation played a crucial role in averting an even greater catastrophe. The process of decontamination and cleanup of contaminated areas began almost immediately after the disaster, but the complexity and scale of the task were enormous. Radioactive contamination of soil, water, and air required extensive measures to manage the aftermath. Temporary protective structures were erected around the damaged reactors to prevent further radiation spread. One of the primary challenges after the disaster was the massive amount of radioactive water used for reactor cooling. The disposal of this water remains a pressing issue. Continuous ocean contamination with radioactive substances has a long-term impact on marine ecosystems. Consequences. The environmental impact of the Fukushima disaster was catastrophic. Large areas surrounding the plant were contaminated with radioactive elements like cesium-137 and iodine-131. Ocean contamination also raised concerns about the safety of fisheries and the marine ecosystem in the region. Radioactive fallout spread over extensive areas, leading to long-term environmental issues. The health effects on the population and plant workers are still not fully understood. However, an increased incidence of thyroid cancer has been reported among children who lived in the affected zone. Studies are ongoing to examine radiation's impact on responders and plant workers, many of whom received high radiation doses during cleanup efforts. The Fukushima disaster inflicted immense economic damage. The costs of disaster mitigation, compensation for victims, and decontamination of contaminated areas are estimated in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Moreover, the disaster led to the closure of many other nuclear plants in Japan, causing an energy crisis in the country. The relocation of over 150,000 people became one of the largest humanitarian challenges following the disaster. Many people were forced to leave their homes and lost their way of life. The psychological impact of this disaster on the local population remains a significant problem, as many are still unable to return to normal life. Political and energy consequences. Following the disaster, the Japanese government reviewed its energy policy, reducing nuclear energy share and increasing investment in renewable energy sources. However, a complete shutdown of nuclear plants proved impossible, and Japan has gradually returned to nuclear power despite public opposition. Internationally, the disaster sparked debates on nuclear energy safety. In some countries, like Germany and Switzerland, a decision was made to phase out nuclear energy, while others, such as France and Russia, continued developing the sector, but with strengthened safety standards. Conclusion. The Fukushima disaster left a deep mark on global history as one of the most serious technological catastrophes. It highlighted that even modern technology cannot fully guarantee nuclear energy's safety in the face of natural disasters. The lessons of Fukushima continue to shape the development of the nuclear industry, and the consequences of this tragedy will be felt for decades to come.